Hello YouTube, welcome back over to GamingHouse. And today I'm bringing you the review of For Honor. For Honor is produced by Ubisoft and it is developed by Ubisoft Montreal. It is available on Xbox One, PS4, and PC. For this review, I played mine on the Xbox One version. Now, For Honor is a hack and slash game, but it's not a full-blown, like, what do you expect from hack and slash? It's hack and slash with a little bit of depth, and that's because of the combat mechanics it has in it, which has a kind of top, left, and right attack option, and that's also how you defend by corresponding. If someone's attacking left, then make sure you are facing left for your defense. My only gripe with that is, this is mostly my opinion, I don't think this is a necessarily bad thing, is I think the top should have a smaller radius. I have it multiple times where I go straight left or right on my controller, and it kind of counts to the top because I might be slightly leaning more towards the top or left. But that's not nothing bad, that's just my opinion. Now, with the combat mechanics, another gripe I have is some characters have much easier combos to do, as in like they are literally just 1 to 2 buttons. Some of them are very spammable, and some are also unblockable moves that are again like very easy to do. We'll get more into that later, mostly into once we talk about the online segment. For story, we're going to go ahead and go into that first. The story of For Honor is it's kind of in this alternate timeline / universe where a natural disaster of like tsunamis, earthquakes has brought factions of knights, Vikings, and samurai all within close proximity of each other, fighting over limited resources. The main antagonist of the story is Apollyon, who is the leader of the Blackstone Legion, and her entire goal is pretty much just cause world war amongst everyone. And that's pretty much it. The story is very basic. There's 3 chapters focusing on each faction, and in each chapter you play 3 out of the 4 classes available in the game for each faction. There's roughly an hour and a half to 2 hours for each chapter. That depends, of course, on difficulty, how quickly you pick up each character, and whether or not you played in co-op, which it looks like there is 2-player co-op. I only played in 2-player, and it looks like only 2 players available. I had 3 friends on, but we never like tested it out. But looking online, it seems to be it's only for 2 players. The story is also a lot of tutorial crap. They will constantly throw messages up to remind you how to do shit left and right, and that includes also with the characters. And again, also, the story is very basic. Don't expect it to be too in-depth, crazy stuff. And for me, I feel like that works out for this. It's, technically in the past, so it's a very simplistic storyline. It works out very well for it. Now, we're going to go ahead and talk about the online segment. This will include talking about the PvP and as well as the PvE, as all the game modes that are available in PvP are available to be played against bots. And starting off with, we're going to get off right into a negative, and that's holy fuck. Microtransactions up the ass up here. You pay for fucking steel, you could pay to get outfits, champion status, and that does... It's of course, because they want to push it so much in your face. You barely earn silver and experience. It is a super grind to earn anything there. The only stuff that doesn't cost like in the thousands of silver is the packs to try and get random gear for your character. And speaking of gear, customization's kind of out depending on the character you picked. I played mostly as a warden, which chest plates and all that are kind of like crap for them. And they have a cool feature in the game with swapping skins. Say you get a new blade for your sword and it's got cool stats, but it looks like utter trash in your opinion, and you like the look of the blade you currently have, you are able to pay silver to change the look of that blade into the one that you actually like. Of course, it has to be available in your inventory, so you have to kind of hoard a little bit, because if you destroy it, then you can't change the look into that weapon or armor. A bad portion of this, though, as I found out, is apparently that is restricted to the gear's rarity. So in other words, you can only change the look of uncommons to look like uncommons, and rare gear to look like rare gear, and the ultra, I don't know what they call the ultra rare gear. I think it's just that, the ultra rare gear to look like other ultra rare gear. Another gripe about the gear, first off, the stats only matter in the 4v4 modes. So in 1v1s and 2v2s, stats are not supposed to be active in there. But at least for the rare sets, I believe looking at like the ultra rare sets, it's actually like different, but for the rare sets, they spec into one stat only, and like either one or two things take a negative hit. Whereas like the uncommon gear and I guess some of the ultra gear that I've seen online is it actually does spread off into 2 of the 3 stats. But it's just the middle tier apparently is trash and it all specs into 1. And coming back to the grind, it's also really hard to invest in more than one character. I have all the characters unlocked, but I've only been really playing Warden. I played a little bit of Lawbringer, but I've mostly invested my time in the Warden because you can't really invest a whole lot of time trying to like level up everyone else, get gear for everyone else, just because it's like a super grind. Getting to talking about a little bit of the PvP, not PvP, PvE for online. The bots actually provide somewhat of a challenge, depending on how you fight them. Obviously, they don't really care that they're right next to a cliff, so you could just sit there and push them off a cliff, and they'll sometimes even back up into them. But if they're fighting them out in the open, they provide a decent enough challenge, also depending on the bot attitude, which bot attitude, you could tell if you play the game enough that they have a certain I can't find a better word for attitude, but like using, say, a Peacekeeper, sometimes you'll fight Peacekeepers that focus more on dodging, or they'll focus more on guard breaking you, or they'll focus on trying to just follow up with a lot of parries and wait for you to attack. That's what I'm trying to get. I can't find a better word for other than attitudes. I know fighting any of the bots that have shields, in other words, Conquerors, Warlords, Valkyries, not as bad, but I push those off cliffs. They're annoying as shit to fight. Now we're gonna go ahead and get into PvP. PvP, I've played the least amount in, and the reason for that is I could already tell it was going to be a bad experience in my opinion. And from what I've experienced, my experience alone is that it's not been great. It's been really on and off, and it definitely shows the faults that are in the combat system and the faults in the mechanics. Again, getting back into what I mentioned earlier about how some characters have really spammy moves, unblockable moves that they can do, and it's really hard to counter those depending on the character you play. Again, I've been playing mostly Warden. Warden doesn't have a lot of cheat moves. They have a unblockable guard break, but that charges up and anyone could easily like sidestep that. But certain moves like the Warlord has like an easy like 1 second headbutt that's unblockable, stun guard break that they can do. Because apparently they changed the guard break counter from the beta. It's harder to counter guard breaks, and that's made like peacekeepers really powerful. And coincidentally, apparently they were the ones that complained in the beta about guard break counters being too powerful then. Another complaint is with the smaller maps and some of the areas on some of the maps you play in, especially for the 1v1s and 1v2s or 2v2s, is a lot of them are located right next to cliffs and shit, and you'll have players that sit there and try to bait you to that. In fact, I'd say a fair amount of the time I played with my friends in the 2v2 is you'll play like the first round pretty honorably, like you'll have a straight up fight, kick shit out of someone, realize they can't win, and then they resort to like cheap tactics of always running back to cliff ledges, running off to their teammate to try and team up on your friend or bait you, etc. A lot of cheap shit. It's bad. There's the irony is that there's no honor in For Honor, and that also crosses over into PvE as well, where even if you're playing in the 4v4 section, you'll have people that constantly come up, and if you're fighting a bot one-on-one, they'll come up and either start wailing on them right away, or just sit there and wait for them to get low health and try to take the execution from you. Like some real scumbags. It's annoying. It's a thing that's unfortunately it's not necessarily the game's fault. I feel bad for faulting it for, but it comes with the toxic player community. Another fault in the multiplayer is that it's peer-to-peer, and you can tell it in the bots, where the bots also have the absolute perfect amount of time to respond to blocks and everything else, and you try to do the same thing in, say, a player versus player match, and it does not work out due to the fact that it's peer-to-peer. You have like a 1 to 2 second delay, depending on connections. And the next thing about online is they have a faction war. It's pretty much akin to Mortal Kombat X's faction wars that they had, except of course there's only 3 factions this time around, and unlike Mortal Kombat X, they don't have an immediate favor off the bat with the Lin Kuei, except they kind of do, because there's another factor. Streamers and YouTubers, I feel, influence it too much. This is more second-hand information from my friend who does watch a lot of Twitch and all that, and he says a lot of them are aligned with the Viking faction, which of course means a lot of followers and all that they would pick the Viking faction just to follow along with their favorite streamer and YouTuber. And from what I've seen a lot from this is the Vikings have been generally kicking a lot of ass. It's been fairly even, but the Vikings have edged out a lot in a lot of turns. And it's also kind of too early to tell how well the faction war is going to play out, because it's fucking like several month thing, and like round 1 isn't even over by the time this review is out. So we're going to go ahead and get into scoring. Again, just to clarify, this is all from my perspective, from what I experienced. I've also looked online for other people's experiences. I heard that, of course, with the whole purchasing with the microtransactions, a lot of people, the moment they get into the Prestige 2, which allows them to get a lot higher gear more often, people pretty much bought a bunch of packs and have like maxed out gear, and that's really fucked with them, because that allows pretty much for like 2 to 3 hit kills. And also people can easily get revenge mode active, and this factors into the 4v4 modes, of course, because it doesn't really carry into 2v2s and 1v1s, but it kind of breaks those modes from what I hear. That the moment people are like the Prestige 3 and they already have max gear score. So scoring for my system is I'm scoring on 1 through 10. 1 being the lowest, 5 being the middle okay ground, and then 10 being like, oh wow, this shit is awesome, you should probably get this. I also use half scores. I don't go like 0.6, 0.9 or something. I go just a half point, and a half point just generally means like I think it could get to the next level in my scoring system, but there might have been 1 or 2 things that just held it back. And my score For Honor, coming from, again, only my experiences and experiences of my friends, is I'm giving it a 5 out of 10. The story, it's okay. It's interesting enough. It's got interesting combat mechanics that, again, are kind of ruined by the fact that players online are able to use the faults in it with easily spammable moves, unblockable moves that are easy to pull off, that are also, unless you're like super like hardcore into this game, like is not easy to counter for those at the average and below average level, which below average, sure, you can argue they need to learn the game, but those at an average level, it's just like, all right, I can't do anything right here. It's got really lackluster customization. The fact that you can't change the skins of all the items, only the same ones in the same tier. Micro fucking transactions. It's 2017. If you're gonna include microtransactions like this in For Honor, the game should have been free to play. It's getting really irritating, and I'm gonna. Really, it's kind of a petty thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to start marking down like 1 to 2 points easily for microtransactions, because it's fucking ridiculous nowadays. And map variation, I feel like there's enough maps, but there's also maps that could have easily worked in other modes. I didn't really cover the amount of maps a whole lot, but a lot of the ones that are in Elimination and Skirmish, I feel like half of those could work in Dominion, and I don't know why they're not in Dominion rotation. And in general, I pretty much wouldn't suggest getting this game unless you got a full squad, or maybe later down the line when obviously rebalancing occurs and maybe a price drop because of the fucking microtransactions in this game. But yeah, mostly, if you're going to get it now, wait till you have a full squad to go with, just because if you start playing a 4v4 modes where you're in the most XP and everything, it's an annoying experience to play with randoms. So that'll do it. What do you think of the score? What do you think of For Honor? As always, like, comment, subscribe, all the fun YouTube stuff. And as always, you're welcome to come back over to GamingHouse for gameplay and commentary.